Welcome back to A Shark's Perspective. So, how does your website work with your content? If you think of how web design has grown over the years, it's moved thankfully from the container to the content. Yet, so many people get caught up in the wrong ways of creating sites, even still with too much reliance on art versus science and too much of designing for the brand instead of designing for their audience. Andy Crestodina is the co-founder and chief marketing officer of Orbit Media, the author of Content Chemistry, the host and founder of the marketing conference Content Jam, and he's a subject matter expert on content marketing and web design. And on this episode, we'll discuss website design, containers versus content, Content Jam, Content Chemistry, authentic imagery, websites for shark lovers like me, nitrox diving, Chicagoland, and a lot more. So let's tune in to a content chemist with a content shark on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. Andy, thank you so much for joining us today on A Shark's Perspective. If you would, please tell us a little bit about your background and career today.
Sure. So I'm not the first, but maybe the second generation of people who do this stuff because I started in 2000 and 2001. I have like half a dozen friends who've been doing it since the 90s.
Wow, that's so old. No, I'm just kidding.
I am old. I'm up. Yeah, you know it.
Yeah.
I'll tell you if I ask later. I'll tell you the age. But so it started a web design company in 2000. Formed this version of this company in 2001. Been doing SEO and analytics since that beginning, so like 18, 19 years of that, and have been doing content strategy, email marketing, social media, blogging, all the teaching, speaking stuff since 2007. So probably 12 years of that, something like that. So the focus of my career has been on SEO, analytics, and website planning. But I'm actually known as someone who speaks at a lot of events teaching content strategy and stuff. Yeah.
And you named your own conference that you have, not a web design conference, but Content Jam.
Content Jam. I run a content marketing conference. It's in Chicago every year. It's in the fall, late fall. So it's funny that you bring that up, and we can jump right into it. People say, Andy, you talk about content marketing and SEO and analytics all the time, but your company does web design. This is not weird to me because it's content strategy. How could I the goal, be top of mind with digital marketing directors on the day they need our help, which is once every 3 to 4 years. How could I keep their attention
right.
for 3 to 4 years if all I talked about was like web design? So obviously I need to be relevant in the adjacent topics. That's normal content strategy, right? So it all evolved from that. So all the videos, all the podcasts, the conference, all that stuff is really about the related stuff. We build cars and we teach driver's ed.
That's a great point. The conference probably has speakers we've never heard of, right? I mean,
you know everybody.
But you've got one really impressive keynote in 2019, a superstar.
We have Mark Schaefer himself as our opening keynote. And a name that is actually just as big in a different community, Will Reynolds.
Yeah.
Is the closing keynote, which is But we've had Ann Handley. We almost always have Jessica Best. We've had Joanna Wiebe. It's the usual suspects of like the most amazing teachers.
Yeah.
The people who just kill it every time and like you learn so much from and you leave both like excited and with a page of practical notes.
Well, to your point earlier about, what you're known for. I mean, Ann Handley is one of these people. I've kind of joked with her because I'm a massive fan of her work and her writing. Mm-hmm. And, when she wrote Everybody Writes, it's perfect for me because it's short and sweet. There's like 1,000 chapters. Each chapter is like 2 pages, which is perfect for somebody with ADD like me. And Anne is one of these people, though, that I think if she started talking about PPC or SEO, I'd listen. She's known as the content expert, though.
Right.
And I don't know, I think a lot of people are sort of wanting to box a lot of marketers in to one specific expertise level. But Mark Schaefer, Mark ran marketing at a major brand for years and years and years. I don't know a lot of CMOs who can only be people that have achieved a lot in marketing. Maybe they're known for that one thing, but if you're at a brand, you can't just know content. You can't just know PPC. You can't just know SEO. You've got to know a full blend of that. So how did you, not necessarily a pivot, and I get where they're totally related, but how did you decide to go down the design path in your own career?
Mm.
And then also, how did you decide to go down to the content path for what you wanted to do with the conference?
Hmm. Well, in the beginning, I wanted to combine art and science,
Yeah.
use both halves of my brain, do something that was both creative and technical, and look at something and say that I made that. Because my old job in the 90s was like an IT recruiter, which is not a creative job. I mean, you can help people change jobs. Um, can be lucrative, but not creative. So the next step was after starting this web design company where I was the web designer and my partner was the programmer, was to learn to do the marketing around the site. Was to and so and then we found a designer who was better than me, and then we found project managers who were better than me. So the story of my career was I kept taking off hats
Hmm.
and getting more specialized in my role. Entrepreneurs in the beginning wear all the hats, and eventually got down to where I was just doing the things that were very difficult to delegate, which is like speaking at conferences and making videos and writing long form practical content. So it's really just a one long evolution, starting from a two-person company to a 36-person company. Uh, the what you can do if you're being more deliberate about it is design your career, design your skill set like the so-called T-shaped marketer. Have you heard of this? Do you know
Hmm.
this one?
I have.
Yeah. So you're going to be excellent at one or two things, and you're going to know a little bit about a lot of things. So that T, the top crossbar, the T is I know, this is the generalist stuff. Yeah, I can talk intelligently about, um, you know, PPC and paid social, and we can talk about affiliate marketing and branding. I can, have sit next to someone on a plane and talk all about persona research. But these are not things that I've spent thousands of hours on.
Exactly.
Maybe the few things where I've gone deep and spent 30,000 hours on are search and analytics, then later content strategy and influencer marketing. So it's a deliberate, you can design your career and design your skill set and like write your future LinkedIn profile today and then build up to it. But I can't say that was really my plan. Mine was more of an
Yeah.
organic path.
Well, congratulations on escaping recruiting. I did as well many, many
Uh,
moons ago, but
yeah.
that was also part of my background as a struggling MarTech professional.
Hmm.
Spending a lot of time coding, but I also, I was fascinated by brand. I was fascinated by
Hmm.
the brands of people even then and how they
Hmm.
sort of position themselves. And then I really got into designing and coding a ton of websites and built out
Hmm.
a side hustle way back when doing that. So let's sort of dive in and talk about websites in particular. What do
Okay.
you think marketers, and what have you learned? What do you think marketers get wrong about websites in general?
Well, the problem with bad websites is similar to the problem with any bad marketing, which is that it's focused on the brand or oneself rather than focused on the
On
audience
the audience and the
and the
user.
problems of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, in web design is a combination of both container and content. So, self-centered containers are containers that have navigation labels that are what the brain wants to call it
Hmm.
instead of what the audience calls it. Or it has features that look pretty but are distracting or confusing. And then, of course, websites also have content, so the content needs to align with the information needs of that visitor. You could sum it up that way. The purpose of a website is to answer the visitor's most important questions in the general priority that they have those questions, sort of emulating a sales conversation and giving that person the information they need. Secondarily, it has to give that person the information you want them to have, because that's important too. Selling yourself, adding testimonial. No one goes to websites to read testimonials, but if you add them, the messaging is stronger.
Hmm.
So you add that evidence, and the evidence keeps the website from being a bunch of unsupported marketing claims. So those are the two main types of content on sales pages: answers to questions and evidence that supports the answers. And then finally, calls to action, like clear, compelling, specific calls to action. These pages should not be dead ends. So answer evidence, call to action. That's a web page. That's a high converting sales page that will generate demand. Do most pages have that? No. Many
No.
pages don't answer visitors' top questions, or they answer questions without giving any kind of support, statistics, years in business, companies you've worked with, case studies, testimonials, right? Those are the two types of content. And then calls to actions are missing from the web all over the place. Contact us is not a call to action.
Right.
a compelling call to action is a face and
Right.
a compelling verb, and tells them something specific. It has space around it to make it visually prominent. That's kind of the game.
That's a great title to a future book on CRO. Contact us is not a call to action button.
Is not. Neither is submit.
Why do you think today? I mean, if you think about 20 years ago, back when we moved just slightly out of, or we were approaching coming out of Y2K, we were pushing that with websites. We were pushing the design you just talked about when you first got
Mm-hmm.
into marketing. If we know this has evolved for the last 20 years, were you thinking that same way? And I mean, is this a progression on your own, or was this something that drove you into marketing because you saw it then? I mean,
No,
hindsight's 2020, but
I did not. I am not an early adopter on some of the major trends. I'm not a laggard, but uh, and I'm not a passive observer to the industry. I mean, we are pushing forward with better standards and improved approaches to web design all the time. It's really interesting. Your question's really interesting because if you look at the evolution of it, 20 years ago, we paid a lot of attention to the container, and today
absolutely.
we're, yep. I mean, we did weird stuff. If you look at our old sites, you know, they were small. They all fit high above the fold. They had flash intros that could be skipped.
Hmm.
Look, we don't have to get into like the crazy stuff we did on the internet back in
The
the day.
most we would look at would be like maybe a monitor size. Nobody ever
Yeah,
even thought about looking at it on a phone.
no, but actually the resolution on our
That's true. Yeah.
desktop computers was 800 by 600.
Yeah.
We have higher resolution on
Oh
our
my
mobile
God.
devices than
Yeah.
we did on the desktop
Yeah.
screens then. There's more pixels in your pocket than. But anyway, it was really much more about the site itself and trying to differentiate by having some sort of unconventional design or navigation style. We didn't even call it UX. Now the emphasis is much more on the content than on the container. So some of the most popular sites have very simple wrappers around them, right? People blog on Medium, and the the flat theme in these templates, right, that make it very simple. People are collapsing their entire navigation to hide behind the hamburger icon until you click. People are building things that are just very so lightweight. The designs now are often so lightweight that they're really emphasizing the message. Makes sense. Nobody ever goes to a website to see how cool it looks. They go to a website to get answers to questions. But having said that, the job is still the same. It's to help the visitor get what they need, so they'll give us
Hmm.
what we want to get from them. So the way that that's done now, because visitors' expectations have changed, and because of social media, and because of mobile, and because of the way digital's measured, and because of all the proliferation of channels. So now we end up with sites that communicate faster and more clearly. With They're not lighter in file size, but they are less visually noisy. We make the pages are taller than they used to be, um, and we're less likely to use uh, navigation styles that let them go anywhere from anywhere. We're guiding people through a path a bit more than we did. So it's awesome to watch the trend and to do something and see if it worked and iterate and see if it works better. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
How do you design a site to reflect that kind of content? I mean, obviously there's different forms of media that you have to take into account because that affects page speed. But really, is there what are you sort of seeing to help people get that content more quickly, the
Sure.
answers to their problems more quickly?
Yep. So it's the test. It's a giant test of empathy. So I'm going to make something up because you and I are both divers.
Yeah.
Okay. We're going on a trip. We're looking at possible dive shops. What are we thinking about? Uh, if you were my dive shop client and I'm going to build you a website, I'm going to talk to you and I'm going to talk to your divers to understand what their top considerations are. And after some research, I'm going to know that distance from your shop to the dive sites, size of the boat, is it PADI or SSI? What
Mm-hmm.
kind of what kind of gear do you have? What time of day can I go? Is it currently even available? Is it booked? What do the boats look like? What kind of animals am I going to
Yeah, or
see?
are there sharks I
Is
can
it kind of
swim
yeah
with?
yeah, there's sharks, right? If you're the target audience, I need to know about it. And so let's just take that one,
Yeah.
okay? Of all the possible considerations, and let's say there's 50, right? Mixed gas and education. Can I get certified here? What if is it refundable? If the weather's bad, all the 100 questions. If you are my target audience, I need to lead with the shark information.
Hmm.
Your listeners know this about you. So now I know what questions I need to answer and roughly the prioritized order. I'm going to put sharks up at the top, and I'm going to guide you, or I'm going to deliberately use it's mind control. Web design is mind control. I'm going to guide your eyes through a series of prioritized messages that give you the information you want because I know that you're one click away from every other website. Bottom line, there's a true story in the life of every visitor to every web page. What brought them here? Why are they here? It's not to hear what we want to say about ourselves. It's
Exactly.
because they have their own selfish reasons for loading this page. So yeah, I've got to. If you don't see sharks on this page, then you can go find a different dive shop's website and book your trip somewhere else.
Yeah, it's usually because they want to push, for this example, nitrox diving because they can make more money on it with that certification than something else, and that's
Classic.
all they push.
What percentage of our visitors? Let's say it's now it's my dive shop and you're their audience. What percentage of you guys need nitrox diving to
Exactly.
make that decision? I mean, is it 2%?
Yeah,
5? It's less than 10%.
less than 10%.
Mixed gas
Absolutely.
is not a popular. Yeah, so so in this example, we didn't get into it. We could totally build an awesome dive website at the end of
Mm.
this show, but in this example, we should also say that this is a very visual decision making process for a diver. I want to see pictures of animals. I want to be inspired. I want to see the boat. I want to see the weather. It's an aspirational thing. These trips are like bucket list experiences. Divers love to dive with a very passionate audience. So that's important to understand too, because some decision-making processes in marketing, offline, online, digital, analog, some are visual and some are more spec-based. And you have to understand your audience and really how they are going to make the decision. Um, some people, it's really like they need lots of detail. There's 6 people deciding in conference rooms over 3 months. The dive site, no, it's like a couple people looking at their trip, and they're gonna, they don't, they're not gonna download a white paper, right?
Well, then, for you, it's a little bit of an art versus science question with designing a website. How much
Mm.
of it, if you just had to guesstimate a percentage, how much of it is art and how much of it is science? Because I feel it feels like we've gotten too far away from the art. It feels like
Mm-hmm.
we've been pushed, AMP by Google
Mm-hmm.
for quite a while. I mean, we talk page speed, page speed, page speed. We talk about hamburger menus and things like that. I mean, just
Mm-hmm.
nonstop. I don't know that we talk nearly enough about the art because, I mean, to your point, I've lived in targeting and addressable targeting for quite some time. I love the idea of just pushing somebody nicknamed Shark, into some shark pictures to pull them in. But a lot of that is just sort of an art as
Mm-hmm.
much as it is a science.
Well, if my friend Michael Agard would say that it's a combination of a creative and an analytical process,
Yeah.
and that the best marketers, it's something like 2/3 analytical. And there's room for inspiration, and you're going to make decisions where you have no data because you
Hmm.
got a new idea, and all analytics is all just historic data, or your creative process is coming up with tests or something. So probably a bad marketer is more like 2/3 art, 1/3 science, or less. They might be all art. Um, and I love creativity, and I told you that's why I started this in the
Yeah.
first place. But a great marketer would be more like 2/3 science because I know that that's what you need to see because I talked to 30 of you or I talked to 10 of you, and now I know the messaging priority on this site. That's data. It's even if it's qualitative data elicited through surveys. This is not strong scientific data, but I still have insights into what you need to see. I have the analytics for the old site. What were the top pages? What were the pages with the top bounce rate? What were the most common exit pages? What pages were most likely seen for successful conversions? I can look at a website's analytics and within 15 minutes
Exactly.
know what I need to carry over in a redesign. So it should be probably 2/3 science, I would hope at least.
Well, and I sometimes get frustrated myself. I think so much about analytics and the data behind it, coming from that background. And then you talk about somebody like Mark Schaefer, who reminds you of the human side of this and what's important about that part of the marketing. And it reminds me often to not go too far to the right or the left, for whatever that analogy is. But what do you think most marketers do wrong with analytics, and where do you think they're doing right?
Well, there's a lot of mistakes you can make with analytics. Some of them are errors of omission. A lot of people don't have it set up yet. They haven't set up goals. You could maybe share. I did a giant piece on how to set up Google Analytics.
Yeah.
Um, uh, but people don't have goals set up, or they have their blog at a subdomain without doing any subdomain tracking, or they haven't filtered themselves out of analytics, or they have a search tool where they haven't set up site search analytics. These things all take minutes, but once they're done, you've got better data. So that's like a setup issue, very common. Other issues are sometimes where the brand has is just looking at aggregate numbers because they click on the left all the time, like the main reports, and they don't ever cross, the mouse cursor never moves over to the right, where you set up segments and filters and advanced filters and secondary dimensions and sorting and all of the drill down into deeper reports. If your mouse is staying to the left part of analytics where the menu is, you are missing out on the real insights where you can slice it up more specifically. So it's like I'm analyzing a dive shop website. This is a fun example. So in the dive shop, I could make if I was doing analytics work on that dive shop website, if I made a segment that shows visitors from a certain traffic source, I could get a sense for people from which channel need what content. What are they engaging with? I could make a segment that shows just the people who convert. Okay, those that converted tended to follow what path through the website. I could go to the all channels report and click to drill down on referrals and see which websites are sending us traffic and do some influencer marketing. I could go to the all channels report and click on social and see people from which social network never convert into leads, and I could save myself 1,000 hours on social media by abandoning a useless social media channel. There's none of those things are really possible if you just click on the aggregate data reports on the left. Now, in each example there, I'm describing how you're clicking on the right side within the reports to add segments or filters or to drill down and get better insights. So those are just big analytics issues where people just aren't really doing analysis. They're just doing reporting. They're not asking questions and finding answers and taking action. That's when the biggest mistake in analytics is to use it for reporting, not analysis. If you're not making decisions and taking action, then you're not getting value from your analytics.
The types of imagery and content now that we use, I know I saw a funny video you guys had about how to produce good social video. Are you starting to apply more authentic type imagery and videos on corporate websites? Are you starting to see people do that more? Granted, there is a different line. It's a different medium, but it's almost that, that blend of who you are as a brand can't be stodgy on the .com, but just 100% crazy personal on Facebook or Instagram or whatever. There's more of a blend now than we used to use. And I'm just curious if you're starting to see people use more authentic, less, because I hate stock photography. I'm just curious if you're starting to see more authentic imagery, as opposed to staged.
Well, you and I both love Mark Schaefer.
Yeah.
And Mark makes this point that the most human brand wins. So the answer is yes, I think it's gotten better where people are dumping the really generic stock photos. It's better to be authentic than to be highly produced. Your visitors don't want to see a perfect picture. They want to see a real picture.
Yeah, exactly.
So use yourself. So the ultimate upgrade on that is to turn on your camera and make a video, and even if it's not 1,000% high production value, it's still real. It's still you. They're still seeing and feeling, that story and what you believe and why you're in business and what problem you solve. So that's like the sales page content, the conversion content. Those videos need to be tell your story about you. That's why that visitor went to that page, was to hear from you in your voice. It's just tone of voice and body language, and it's a face, and faces are the most compelling visual you could possibly add to anything. On the other hand, you bring up social media, which is where it gets fun because
Yeah.
people are really stretching it now. It's cool. The other extreme for video is the social video, which I'm getting great results with just making like tiny 1-minute commercials.
Yeah.
Make a 1-minute commercial for that piece of content you made and say, hey, we just recorded this thing. It was a fun conversation about web design and analytics issues. We used diving as an example. This was a Friday afternoon conversation that was super low key yet really practical. Click to give it a listen. That video of me calling to action the play on this piece of content is 1,000% more likely to drive a result than just a social post, like a text-based social post. So yeah, you've got on one end of the spectrum, your trust-building, storytelling, conversion optimization video. It should look good and be well produced and played in a professional video player embedded on your sales pages. And the other end of the extreme is the native in the app, the social media video, which is really just you being just beating out everyone else who's just using text because you've got motion in your in their social stream.
Well, I find it very interesting. I know there's obviously a difference, but if you're on even LinkedIn, which is much more professional than Instagram, there are things that you're going to put out there, and maybe not you or me, but there are a lot of things that a lot of people put out there that are more casual, authentic of who they are than their corporate profile picture on their website.
Right.
Makes sense to some degree, but we still are reluctant to create web design that speaks to people with the kind of content we still find a need. And a lot of that comes from the agencies that those brands are working with that think they want photos, and it's good to put a face. Good to listen to Andy and put a face on there. Let's go to Getty Images and find or iStock Photo and find some stock photography of a millennial, holding a TV set and or a phone, and let's stick that on a website.
Oh man!
And that's
I know
it. You see it over and over and over again. But if you went to any kind of site other than that main domain, you're going to find a more realistic view of how people are. And some of that is, I get the formal part of brand positioning, but that still is the thing that turns people away, even with web design. And there's a happy medium. I mean, I can do shark videos on my website, just like you could on an agency website, but you couldn't do that for, Tyson. Well, it's a bad example, but you're not going to put it on Tyson.com or Domino'sPizza.com or whatever those kind of sites are. You're not going to you're going to do that. They're going to do a staged picture of a pizza as opposed to the one that actually comes out of the oven. So I find it very interesting with website design how we're still, as much as it makes sense to go make it more human, more realistic, more authentic, we still are inclined to go make sure that the Getty people are being paid for those images. And so I've always found that fascinating how we still aren't able to let go a little bit.
No, it's again the same thing, right? Lack of empathy.
Exactly.
Pretend you're the audience.
Exactly.
What do you care about? What would you rather see? So people think, well, it's not going to look. I don't know. People have trouble letting go. They don't want to see themselves. They don't want something that's not like totally over retouched. They don't want to see. They don't mind spending the money because it addresses the other insecurities. But really, you're the visitor. What's going to affect you? What's going to move you? What do you care about? You want real information. If you want to improve, here's a tip. You can improve the conversion rate of almost any page by adding a face of an actual person who works there, not the headshot lady or the headset lady.
Right.
You got because that actually is it adds visual prominence next to the call to action to put a face next to the call to action, but it also answers a question: who might I talk to if I contact this company?
100%.
Oh, it's Dave. There's Dave right there.
Yeah.
So and you can even put Dave's face, Dave's job title, and years of service at your company next to the call to action with an interesting CTA, right? Like, ask Dave your toughest question about, shark diving, that it's and watch what that does to your conversion rates. It's a almost universally applicable tip to be human right when it counts, right when they're. And then what happens is they begin to have an internal dialogue with Dave even before they fill out the form. It's like, oh, yeah, maybe Dave knows this. I'm gonna reach out. That doesn't work if it's the so-called headset honey, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
The stock photo lady of the headset that everyone's seen
It's it.
10,000 times,
Yeah.
right?
I just read it was a playbook for customer happiness after a study showed dissatisfaction from people seeing, not having anybody they can actually talk to, or if it's some bot with the headset honey. I love that description.
Oh, that's so sad. I shouldn't have even put it that way. It was a website once that was called that, I think. It was like headsethoney's.com, and it was like a ridiculous. It was making fun of that idea, right? It
Right.
was a giant gallery of like fake, of staged photos of people wearing headsets.
Well, just be sure if you take an authentic picture of yourself with your family, just try to bring in models for your spouses and children. How should people look at search then with websites? What are some sort of best practices you help with being able to navigate within?
Well, the best built websites involve a keyword research process before you make a sitemap.
Thank you.
So I don't know if it's if people call it nitrox diving or mixed gas diving. I can find out, and
Hmm.
I call the page what people call it. Before that, even a good website redesign process involves looking at the current rankings of every page, so you preserve any. First of all, by not changing URLs if possible, and if absolutely necessary, changing them but using 301 redirects,
Thank you.
preserve link equity,
Absolutely.
but also preserve current rankings. This page is highly relevant for this phrase. Okay, when you know that, you're going to take a light touch in the editing process. You're not going to wholesale rewrite it. You're not going to cut a bunch of content out of it because the search engine thinks that that's a good page on that topic. So this is why some website redesign projects have negative ROI. They
Absolutely.
launch a site with different URLs. They took out pages that were working. They took out content that was converting. They took out rankings that they
Such a great
gutted.
tip. Yeah.
Right. So first of all, like a doctor would say, do no harm. And secondly, align your navigation labels, your sitemap, your content, your user flow to go with the things that people really want from you. And searches is a big clue. It's a giant clue that people wanted this thing. More people wanted it, or even like you said earlier, I can tell you in 2 seconds in Google Trends, per geography, right? My dive shop is I'm in Louisiana, wherever I am. Per geography, I could tell you what's more popular, shark diving or nitrox diving or whatever, right? You could actually, it's like it's like market research at everyone's fingertips.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, it's more data-driven empathy. Again, that 2/3 science, 1/3 art. But it's a great question, and I'm glad you asked because there's some pretty prescriptive things anyone can do.
Yeah, and I've found so many people who don't understand you can update the content, you can update tags all day long, but don't screw with the URLs if they were good URLs. And I don't know why they do it, but Andy,
There's a
go ahead.
well, there's a few good reasons, but they're not. But they're like last resorts. I
Exactly.
mean, yeah, people should be very sensitive to their URL structure during a redesign, unless you're a tiny site with no traction in search and
There you
it
go.
didn't
Yeah.
matter anyway. But for most of us, it's like you're moving. The post office needs to know your new address, right? And don't change your address if you don't have to. If you can bring your mailbox to your new house, like
Yeah.
Google will find you. Yeah.
Well, Andy, I know you enjoy the water as well, so I've got to ask, what is your favorite kind of shark and why?
Oh, well, the shark I've seen the most of is the nurse shark. I did a couple shark dives in Belize and loved it. They're gentle and beautiful sharks. Uh, my dream would be to see the whale shark. I've never seen
Oh
one.
yeah,
Yeah,
they're
that would be
beautiful.
great. I mean, the just for grace, I've never dove with or ever seen a blue shark or a white tip reef shark, hammerheads in the Galapagos. I mean, one day I will hopefully have the chance to dive with many more of these animals. But the only shark I have much experience with is the nurse shark, which is just such a cool thing to see because they sit down, they're super chill, right? They're like lying there. They can, you don't bother them, but you don't have to, even back up. It's like, hey, dude,
Yeah,
I love them.
exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. Well, those are easy to swim with. You can pretty much go to any aquarium and they'll stick you with a nurse shark. So,
yeah, they're sweet. They're
um,
nice little, yeah.
well, Andy, it is that special time of the show. Are you ready for the five most interesting and important questions you're going to be asked today?
I'm ready.
All right, number 1. Scuba diving in the Cayman Islands or scuba diving in the Bahamas?
Cayman.
Yeah.
Bahamas are gutted today, but
Well, that's true.
yeah. But I dove in the Bahamas. It didn't look great. Caymans would probably be better.
Bahamas are pretty good, though.
Okay.
It's clear
I'll go
water,
back.
or depending on where you were. Not hanging out at the
Okay.
Atlantis resort, with all the rich people. So, number 2.
Yeah. Mhm.
Number 2. Billy Goat's Tavern in Chicago, a legendary place, or Glenn's Diner.
Glenn's Diner. I ate there yesterday. At
I
Glenn's, they
saw
got
it
a
on
huge
your
Glenn.
website. I didn't know you ate there yesterday. So,
Yes,
all right, number
I love
3.
Glenn's. Uh-huh.
Chicago Cubs or Chicago White Sox?
When you're raised a certain way, it's not like people. I never made the choice, but it's been Cubs since I was a kid. It's been Cubs. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm on the north side. My old place. I could hear the crowd and double plays and home runs. It's got to be the Cubs. I'm saying the Cubs.
All right, number 4. Content marketing or website design?
Well, personally, for me, the greater glory would be in the content marketing. Again, it's like, would you rather build a car or would you rather be a race car driver? I love the creative aspect of both, but the personal rewards and passion for me at this point in my career would come from the content more than. But my team, that's an impossible question, man. I can't. I'm not gonna answer that. Come on.
Yeah. All right, number 5.
Uh,
Well, one pays the bills and one's your true love. It's like
that's true. Yep.
not everybody
That's
grows up to be Batman. Sometimes you got to be an accountant. So, number
right.
5, and the most important question you're being asked today is biscuits or cornbread?
Biscuits.
Good
Biscuits,
man.
biscuits, and gravy. Biscuits.
Good man.
Great question.
Andy, where do you want people to find out more about you, follow your thought leadership, come to the conference, hear you speak?
Yeah.
Where do you want to point them?
Orbitmedia.com. I write an article there every 2 weeks. If you subscribe, you're going to get something every 2 weeks. That's it. But
And they got to
the
get
book
Content
probably,
Chemistry. It's a good
yeah,
book.
the book, it's all in the book. Actually, just keep the site. Go to the book. It's got all my best in there. I rewrite it every year and a half. This latest version has 100 more pages than the last one,
Wow.
version 5. Content Chemistry, it's everything I know between 2 covers.
That's fantastic. Andy, thank you so much for being with us today on A Shark's Perspective.
This was awesome. Thanks, man.
Thank you, buddy.
See you, Shark. Bye-bye.
So there was my conversation with Andy Crestodina, the co-founder and chief marketing officer of Orbit Media, the author of Content Chemistry, the host and founder of the content marketing conference, Content Jam, and he's a subject matter expert on content marketing and web design. Let's take a look at 3 key takeaways from our conversation with him. First, take a good look at your own brand's website today and ask if the visitors' questions are answered, or are you simply just focused on the brand instead of the audience and the user? Web design is a combination of container and content, and a lot of websites may answer questions, but not necessarily the questions that people need to answer with the right CTAs. I love when he said, contact us is not a call to action button. Is your brand pushing content on a site that moves people in the right direction? I mean, quite simply, you need to design your content for where they will flow. Pay attention a little more to science versus just art. Art is great, but the better marketer looks at data to understand what they want. The problem with the art is that it relies too much on your gut. Data at least tells me what they've done. Second, when's the last time you went to a site to look at how cool it was? I laughed about this because this is something that I used to do years ago. But if you look at old sites and how they've evolved with design and style, now the emphasis is on content and not container. As he pointed out, a lot of sites are just lightweight wrappers today and focus on helping someone guide themselves with that content. And at least with imagery, as he said, visitors don't want to see a perfect picture. They want to see a real picture, so be authentic. You've heard me talk about stock imagery a lot on other episodes, and nothing nothing against Getty or iStock or any of those type of services, but the pictures don't have to be and often shouldn't be perfect. And don't listen to agencies all the time simply on stock imagery. Push back a little bit and act like a consumer looking at a website instead of just a brand or agency telling each other what imagery necessarily needs to be used. Third, love this quote from Andy when he said, "The biggest mistake in analytics is to use it for reporting and not analysis. If you're not making decisions and taking actions, then you're not getting value from your analytics." So very true. Got a question? Send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. Thank you for the privilege of your time. And if you're going to Content Jam and it's day 2 and you're getting breakfast, make sure to ask Andy if they have jam and not jelly for your toast. So join us on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.